Good evening, the Green Scorpion here, and welcome back to week 3 of Monster Month. For this week's list, we're going full Van Helsing and hunting some vampires. First things first. I'm gonna get out of that voice. Jesus, that's tough. Second of all, what is a vampire? The rough idea of a vampire has appeared in cultures all around the world. Like zombies, different countries have various rules and even different names for the creature. Dampir in the Balkans, Striga in Albania, Vrykilakis in ancient Greece, and Strigoli in Romania. The one thing they had in common was that they fed off the vitality of others, mainly by drinking blood. It sounds like mere superstition, but in Europe the rise of these stories actually led to mass hysteria, with actual trials and executions being held. Centuries of folklore were finally given a true name by John Polidori in his 1819 publication, The Vampire. But it was Bram Stoker's Dracula 80 years later that birthed the image we imagine today. Vampires aren't so much a single kind of creature, they're an idea, a collection of possible traits. They're usually undead, but refined and intelligent, unlike their decomposing zombie cousins. Vampires are rather elitist when choosing who to turn. Subjects often have class and refinement, and are much more of a singular threat. They're manipulative, hypnotic, and often seductive. They tend to change their shape, usually into bats, but also other animals or even mist. Their aversions can include the sun, silver, holy symbols, running water, or even garlic. And while they can be the offspring of demons or turned by another vampire, they are always terrifyingly human. It's their twisted personalities that have made them such enduring horror icons for years. And today we're here to celebrate all of those darklings who've helped and hindered us in our adventures. Cover your necks and check the mirror. It's time to count down the top 10 vampires in video games. This list was actually kind of tough for me to make because there aren't too many notable vamps in video games, and a lot of them are from games I haven't actually played. I really wanted to use Ackroyd Brunstad from Melty Blood, but she comes from a visual novel series first, so I can't. Seriously, I am really mad about that. Honorable mentions 100 times over. I had to comb through my archives to get what I needed, and for number 10, I found myself asking, Raphael's a vampire? Soul Calibur doesn't spend a lot of time telling you about, well, anything that's going on, but Raphael Sorell is, in fact, a child of the night. He was just a normal guy when he first appeared in Soul Calibur 2. Heir to a rich family of the French Empire, Raphael lost his claim after killing another man in self-defense. He was on the run, saved only by a peasant girl named Amy who hid him from the authorities. That day, Raphael swore to find a way to fix this business with the nobles and repay Amy for her kindness. And like all the characters in the series, he felt the best way to accomplish his goals was by finding Soul Edge. He confronted the sword's wielder, Nightmare, and after a grueling battle that lasted for days, Raphael lay defeated. He managed to survive, but with a cost. Don't ask me how this works, but Soul Edge tainted his blood, and he became malfested with darkness. Even Amy was corrupted while dressing Raphael's wounds. So Raphael went to Plan B. Create an army of darkness, obtain more power, and destroy all sources of holiness so that he and Amy can have a perfect world to live in. He really is trying to be a good guy, but the more good he attempts to do, the more he gets hurt and corrupted. It would be really sad if his quips weren't so funny. Raphael returns in all the following games, just now he's a vampire. Oh, and I guess that explains why he bites people's necks in his critical finish. I always wondered about that. Vampirism isn't a big part of his identity, but it does explain a lot of his actions. And the whole fencing vampire motif just blends together so nicely.
You win! This is reality. Know your place.
So, vampires are a result of demonic forces infecting humans. But where did these forces come from? Incubi? Succubi? Satan himself? Mortal Kombat tells us that they're Moroi, from the realm of Vaeternus. Here, you might run into our number 9 candidate, Nitara. First appearing in Deadly Alliance, Nitara is one of those characters who fell between the sofa cushions of the roster, lost forever into obscurity that only a few lucky souls like Kenshi managed to crawl out of. Her part in the story is largely irrelevant, but she's managed to stick into a few fans' memories, which is more than I can say for Draman. Her design and strength mix together various bits of vampire lore. The term Moroi is Romanian, she has wings like the medieval succubus, and she has these beastly claws like a Nosferatu. These claws help her in one of her fighting styles, Fu Jiao Pai. She feeds on blood, as seen in this brutal fatality, but can also use some of the blood she's collected as a projectile. A blood bullet, if you will. Though she can match blows with the toughest of opponents, I'm more impressed by her ability to match wits. Mythology chronicles a long history of vampires manipulating others to get what they want. They're tempters and chess masters. What Nitara wants, though, isn't evil. She just wants to separate her home realm from Outworld so that her people can live in peaceful seclusion. This requires her to retrieve an orb buried in lava, which she couldn't get by herself. I'd have expected this character to use her succubus charms to control some guy to do it, but instead, she thoughtfully finds a way to trade for it. She found a Zateran blade that Reptile would want, and traded it to him for his services, then convinced him to attack Cyrax. Cyrax's arm panel was destroyed in the fight, trapping him in Outworld, and that's when Nitara comes to Cyrax explaining that if he helps her get the orb, she'll send him home. There's no mind control going on here. She's getting people to want to help her. And when her deal with Cyrax is complete, the two peacefully go their separate ways. I respect that. She's strong, she's smart, and she's a survivor that only the Battle of Armageddon and a reboot could destroy. I'm still holding out for her return someday. I know it's unlikely, but if Bo Raicho and Tremor can find their way back to continuity, why not Nitara?
Nitara wins.
Okay, deep breath. Project Toho. Like Blaze Blue, this is a big one. A game series of more than 20 entries that trails off into manga, anime, and millions of fan projects. From the outside looking in, there's not much to understand here. In a world populated entirely by little girls, you fly through the air and attack enemies who rain down projectiles like captivating lethal mandalas. At least, that's what I thought the story was, but lo and behold, these games actually have a plot. Events take place in Gensokyo, a sequestered community for all types of magical creatures. These include gods, celestials, witches, and an incredibly powerful vampire named Remilia Scarlet. Remilia is the mistress of the Scarlet Devil Mansion and the main antagonist of Toho 6, which was a sort of reboot for the series as it was just coming to Windows machines. Basically, the magical creatures need to live in peace without disrupting the delicate humans outside the wall. When two creatures squabble, they settle their differences in these 2D shooter standoffs. Since every monster has the firepower of 100 Millennium Falcons, a system called Spell Card Rules was established to keep them in check. We wouldn't have these guidelines though, if not for Remilia. When she first arrived in Gensokyo, she went on a rampage and only stopped when the yokai agreed to send tasty humans as tribute. The humans weren't a big fan of this, and thus this flashy system of checks and balances was put into effect. Makes as much sense as League of Legends, I suppose. 500 years later, Remilia decides that she really doesn't like the sun, and casts a spell that envelops the sky in scarlet mist that can protect her, even in the daytime. It's up to you to breach the mansion, fly through bullet hell, and beat the vampire at her own game. This might make Remilia sound like a horrible person, but really she's just bored out of her mind. She takes it pretty well when you defeat her, and opts instead to carry a parasol whenever she wants to journey out in the daytime. Yes, this was less trouble to Remilia than having to carry an umbrella. She's actually pretty sweet when you get to know her. She's as wise as you'd expect from someone her age, but the fact that she's eternally a little girl comes out at times. Her house is mostly staffed by fairies, not because she enslaved them or anything, but because the fairies just really like her. She's not the only vampire either. Her sister Flandre has the power to destroy anything with a single touch, and is completely insane. But that might be because Remilia's kept her locked up in the basement for the past few centuries. Again, you'd think this makes Remilia evil, but she's actually very loving and protective of her sister. Her morals may seem a little shifty to us, but maybe we'll understand when we're older. Like, 500 years older. Maybe then I'll be able to beat this game on Lunatic. Mega Man 7 had a bat-themed robot master named Shademan, but as is often the case, the Battle Network series reimagined it into a cooler form. Here, we get Shademan.exe. Sure, he's just a computer program, but he has all the trappings of a vamp. Remilia is able to split into bats to escape danger, but Shademan is our first to go all the way into the bat imagery. Vampires have been known to transform into a variety of animals, but these nocturnal echolocating flying mammals have always been synonymous, probably because of the vampire bat. They hunt at night, they drink blood, and they have membrane wings like demons are often depicted to have. Shademan has the wings seamlessly worked into his cape. His attacks are just as bat-like, including claws and damaging echolocating waves. Outside of combat, Shademan's actually a lot sillier of a villain than I remember. He likes his evil over the top with colorful word choices and a signature laugh. And he's quick to flee as soon as he's even slightly vulnerable. But that shouldn't distract from just how effective he is. At the start of the game, he deletes quite a number of navis for the sheer pleasure of it. He's also the one to introduce the Dark Chip to Mega Man, which is very powerful but slowly creates a Dark Soul inside him. So in a sense, Shademan is turning Mega Man. Lan and Mega Man proved too resilient for that, but resilience is Shademan's middle name. Like any vampire, he's frustratingly hard to kill and resistant to most attacks. He's the driving force behind a crossover with Boktai, and in Boktai 2, he absorbs enough dark power to manifest in the physical world. Even the solar-powered Django has trouble taking him down, and vampire extermination is his specialty. Vampires have a tendency to always come back, but when the purification of Django's pile driver can't kill you, you're a problem. In this case, instead of retreating back to his coffin, he's back in a Nebula thumb drive somewhere. When Mega Man finally deals the killing blow in Battle Network 4, Shademan implies that he'll never truly die. He'll live on as the darkness corrupting Mega Man. Or as himself in Battle Network 5, that works too. Number 6 is a must-have for vampires. Alucard. Rachel Alucard. The head of the Alucard family... Psst, it spells Dracula backwards, it's from a movie. Madame Rachel is one of the original playable characters in BlazBlue, and one of the most powerful beings in the game. She'll let you know it too, she never misses a chance to condescend to someone. Besides being a vamp, she's the current head of the Alucard house. You know, most vampires seem to be nobles. You'd think there'd be more defenseless peasants being turned, but vampires prefer royal bloodlines. Rachel's also an incredibly gifted sorceress, and an onlooker, a mighty being who is able to view all events of the world so long as she doesn't interfere with them. Unfortunately, the world's been caught in this 100-year time loop, so being an onlooker is like watching reruns forever. Eventually you have to change the channel. Rachel ends up interfering too much, first by saving Ragna's life, and then by using her shield, the Tsukuyomi unit, to defend a major city. Because of this, she lost her onlooker powers, and with the emergence of more imposing forces, her power has waned considerably, but she's still a major driving force in combat, and the greatest adversary to Terami, with whom she's battled in a cosmic chess game for several hundred time loops. Rachel's motif mixes the symbolism of witches and vampires. She fights primarily with two familiars, a sassy cat named Nago and a put-upon bat named Yi. Rachel does a lot of work too, transfiguring them into different shapes and throwing in some potent wind and light magic, but they're the ones taking all the hits for her. When she's defeated, she doesn't even fall over, her pets do. She just kinda shrugs and lies back. The vampirism comes out in more subtle ways. Nago's default form is usually an umbrella to shield Rachel from the sun, which also kind of ties into the storms she creates, and... are those inverted crosses on her dress? Well then. And I love this. In any stage with mirrors, Rachel doesn't have a reflection. Nice catch, developers. Other than that, Rachel hates her Vrykalakan tendencies. She's only ever sucked someone's blood once, that person being Ragna, and that was to save his life. Though she's especially hard on the blood edge, there's a lot of evidence to show that she has feelings for him. She admires that a mortal like him always tries to face the impossible odds, even if he can't see how impossible those odds are. And she's unaffected by the love glasses. I'm pretty sure that means that she was in love to begin with. She's a little tough to learn in-game, but that's only because her power exceeds ours. She probably thinks that you're unworthy of controlling her. If it weren't for her involvement, the good guys would be positively hopeless.
Finish! I messed up! I'm not entertained at all. Rachel, ring!
You may have already accused me of ripping off Quarterguy for this list. Hey, I'm a big fan of his top 10 vampires, but I couldn't just exclude vampires from Monster Month just because it had been done so well already. Actually, I have a lot of the same choices, and in a similar order even. Oh man, I gotta get off this pattern. I know, I'll hide where no one in the Countdown community will ever find me. Baldur's Gate. We're talking old school Western RPGs here. I love me some Dungeons & Dragons, and in 1987, the Forgotten Realms became a popular setting for campaigns. The setting was so popular that BioWare set its Baldur's Gate series there. That's right, BioWare. If you like Mass Effect and Dragon Age, it's all here in Baldur's Gate. Open-endedness, a customizable main character, different alignment options, memorable allies, romance options, it's great. Maybe just a little clunkier. And I am off the beaten path here, so forgive me if my visual aids aren't fantastic. I gotta take what I can find. So early in Baldur's Gate 2, you're fighting a torturous sorcerer named John Irenicus. Imoen, who is your closest friend in the world, squares off with him in a spellcaster's duel, but then both Imoen and Irenicus are arrested by a group called the Cowled Wizards for unsanctioned use of magic and taken away to parts unknown. You consult a seedy guild called the Shadow Thieves, who offer to locate Imoen for a lofty price of 20,000 gold. But while raising the money, you're approached by a rival guild who will help you for a fraction of the cost. Sounds like a good deal, right? Well, here's the catch. This new group is made up almost entirely of vampire assassins, and led by the salacious Bodhi. So it's the player's choice. Side with criminals, or side with vampires who are also criminals. A lot rests on this decision alone. I can't say which is the better option, it depends on what kind of game you want, but I wouldn't blame you for avoiding Bodhi's wrath for as long as possible. Vampires have level drain, meaning getting hit by one of their physical attacks makes your characters lose levels. There's not really a good option to take here, other than going home and letting the bad guys win. It wouldn't be Baldur's Gate without a heart-wrenching decision. A lot of your party will be upset if you join Bodhi. Some will even leave you, and for good reason. Bodhi has you doing some pretty messed up errands for her. It's for the greater good though, right? Keep telling yourself that. Eventually Bodhi will reveal her true colors. Not that she's evil, you already knew that, but she's actually in league with John Irenicus. And the Cowled Wizards. You got played like a chump! The whole thing is just a scheme to use Imoen and the protagonist in a process to gain godlike power. Though Irenicus is the main villain and the final boss, Bodhi is arguably the one pulling the strings. The two were actually elves until Bodhi convinced Irenicus to use his dark magic to sap the elves' sacred tree of life. If you know anything about Buddhism, you might get the irony in Bodhi's name now. After they were exiled, Bodhi actually got herself turned into a vampire on purpose just so she could help her brother enact vengeance. She's a sadist, and when given the chance to kill you, she instead drops you into a labyrinth so she can chase you down like the most dangerous game. As for the final encounter with her, well, just be prepared. She has a 24 in strength, which is just 1 point lower than the optional boss Firkag, who, by the way, is a dragon. Her attacks don't do too much damage, but she gets 3 in one action, and each one drains 5 levels. 5 levels! That's 15 levels if she hits you with her whole combo, 75% of your experience at that point in the game. And if you lose all your levels, you're dead. My advice? She's got low HP, so just nuke the hell out of her before she can do too much damage. Go for the eyes, boo. Go for the eyes. That was cool. Now if only there was a vampire in Killer Instinct.
Have you confessed your sins?
Thank you. Maya and Mira Falagueros were the pride of Amazonia. Together they led a group called the Night Guard in countless missions to rid the world of creatures of darkness. Little did they know, they would be supplying their enemies with one of the most lethal monsters of all. In a battle against the Coven of Siberia, the sisters were pinned down by carnivorous wendigos. Mira sacrificed herself, blowing up a tunnel so that Maya could escape. However, the Coven reclaimed Mira's broken body from the rubble and decided that they liked her initiative, giving her an elixir that converted her into a mighty vampiress and their new top agent. The Coven equipped Mira with thorned gauntlets, which dig into her skin and allow her to use her blood in combat. Blood magic, or hemomancy, isn't necessarily synonymous with vampires. Vladimir, for example, wasn't eligible for this list. But when it all comes together, it's pretty fitting. By sacrificing some of her own health, Mira can convert her blood into a sharp liquid metal, increasing the range of her slashes and conjuring homing bat projectiles. The health she sacrifices turns into gray health in the life bar, which Mira can restore by embracing her enemy. This makes Mira into an interesting kind of glass cannon, much different than other indestructible vamps on this list. She also has quite an aloof relationship with gravity. She has some wicked aerial normals, can zoom in with her floor-sweeping drill kick, which is totally Cammy's spiral arrow, adding blood to the damage and rewarding herself for her combos with a finishing bite. She can even turn into bloody mist. It takes precision to pull off the character and every attack counts, but it's totally worth it for this unique accent. How many other Brazilian Russians have you heard of?
Your life, my plaything.
And now that she's transformed, Mira realized that she was pretty bitter about the sacrifice and began nursing a foul vendetta against her sister until the day they would meet again as enemies. Blood is thicker than water, Maya, which in this case is a bad thing. I actually considered bending my definition a bit to include Morrigan from Darkstalkers. She is a succubus, I know, but with the bat motif and the feeding off of vitality, she works stylistically. Still, it wouldn't be fair to Dimitri Maximov, or as I like to call him, Vamp Ryu. You gotta give Dimitri props for resilience. He was once a noble of the fiendish dimension of Makai, until he decided that he wanted more land and challenged Belial Ainsland, a demon and powerful ruler. Belial defeated Dimitri and exiled him and his castle into real-world Romania, where the sun threatened to destroy Dimitri from the inside out. So what's a down-and-out Hellion to do? First, he takes a good 50-year-long nap to regain his strength. Next, he uses some magic to put up barriers protecting his castle and himself from those pesky UV rays, and after half a century, rumors had begun to spread throughout Romania of the Beast of Yonder Castle, and wannabe heroes came to attack him with stakes and garlic. This was hilarious to Dimitri, since in Darkstalkers those weaknesses were mere rumors, and before long his mansion was fully staffed with obedient thralls. He continued to strengthen himself by drinking human blood, which it turns out tastes just like Makai wine. Oh, and at one point Earth was attacked by a cosmic being named Pyron, who Dimitri defeated and consumed. He ate Pyron! After another 100 years of Rocky-style training, Dimitri returned to Makai for the ultimate grudge match, only to find that Belial had left his lordship to Morrigan, and then his castle was stolen by another demon lord named Jeddah. So his conquest is on hold. Dimitri is the easy-to-access Shoto of Darkstalkers. You got your fireball, you got your uppercut, but Ryu and Ken never really turn into a swarm of bats. He gets major props for rocking that Bela Lugosi cape, using it to block attacks and turning it into wings and drills. Like many gothic vampires, Dimitri's true form is more demonic in nature, but he likes looking handsome, so he only brings out that form for his biggest attacks. But yeah, let's talk about the real claim to fame, Midnight Bliss. Dimitri hypnotizes his opponent, takes his demon form, and sucks the life out of them. But it's not just any hypnosis. When he entrances an enemy, he turns them into a woman. Unless they're already a woman, in which case he turns them into a hotter woman. Like I said, seduction has been a big part of vampire stories for a long time, just read Bram Stoker. But this is a whole new level. I can only assume his hypnosis affects the very hormones inside the Darkstalkers' bodies to transform them. It turns Talbane into a kitsune, Rikuo into a mermaid, it turns Huitzel organic, so there goes the hormone theory, and it must counter other magics because it reverts Xienko and the charm back into the human sisters. Wow, that's all kinds of wrong. Am I on the wrong side of the internet here? I don't feel safe. Arc System Works proves not only to be one of the flashiest producers of fighting games, but also devoted vampire sympathizers. Not only did they make Rachel Alucard an ultimate force for good, they also produced Guilty Gear XX and the character Slayer. All cards on the table, I love this guy! Slayer enjoys the finer things in life, like poetry, a clear night sky, and looking his best at all times. But nothing is as important to him as Sharon, his dazzling wife. After starting an assassin's guild, because vampires do that apparently, Slayer retired to be with his human spouse, and the two share a loving relationship. In fact, she even willingly supplies him with blood, which he otherwise avoids taking from people. That's adorable? If there's anything that comes close to that passion, it's Slayer's taste for a good fight, and Sharon's always close by to cheer him on. Slayer plays by the rules, only engaging in fair one-on-one bouts, and he is respectful to a fault. Vampires in media are usually implied to be stronger than normal humans, and while that's reflected in Bodhi's stats, nowhere is that better showcased than Slayer's fighting styles. In a game of swords, spears, and anchors, Slayer uses only his bare hands, like a true gentleman. He's slower than other characters, sure, but his immense damage potential has allowed him to enjoy most games from the upper tiers. He'll backdash cancel through big attacks, going right into simple, straightforward overdrives and an instant kill where he uppercuts his opponent into the moon while reciting an original haiku. The guy exudes class. And like Rachel, he doesn't even pass out or get upset when he's defeated. He actually looks rather pleased. Being truly immortal, Slayer revels whenever a human can actually take him on. And despite all the limb regenerations and flying leaps, he's always holding back. However, it's Slayer's relationship with Mira that really sells it to me. He takes an observer's position in her journey, giving her advice to what will make her most happy, and somehow this never comes off as condescending. He's just a great guy who wants to see others succeed. He's one of the most sincerely good vamps ever written. He subverts expectations in other ways too. He wears crosses, and not even inverted ones, and because he's a good soul, he has no trouble standing in sunlight, though he asks the protector of day, Kai Kisuke, for permission first, just as an appeal to tradition. His mannerisms are out of the ordinary, but his sense of style is unmistakably vampire.
Slayer, win, straight.
I hope no one's too disappointed that my list is so similar to Quarter Guy's. Adam just hit the nail on the head, and I agree with most of his choices, at least for the games I've played. This comes right down to Castlevania at number 1. But I'm gonna have to deviate here. It all depends on the criteria you're going with. Alucard is probably the more interesting character, you get to play as him in an amazing game, and I don't even have a problem with him being half human. There's no reason he shouldn't be number 1. But the way I see it, the best pick is Big Daddy himself, Dracula. I've been judging these monsters for all sorts of reasons. For Dracula, it's not about being an interesting character, even though he is. It's not about being an interesting take on the concept, even though he is. It's not even about being the most powerful, which he certainly is. It's the fact that Dracula and the setting around him incorporates every theme and association of vampires from the last 1,000 years. The coffins, the candles, hypnosis, oak stakes, demons, bats, transformation, silver, high class, having a son named Alucard, mirrors, dragons, eternal nights, organs, a love of kidnapping women, and a niece named after Elizabeth Bathory. Though named after a pre-existing figure, Dracula's even easier for me to justify as a gaming character than Zeus. While the real-world Prince Vlad III was a 15th century Wallachian general, and Bram Stoker's creation was implied to be the same man, the big boss was once a knight named Matthias Kronkivist. He dutifully served his lord, Leon Belmont, until his wife Elizabeth died of illness. Devastated, Matthias struck out against God for his cruelty, and he came to possess the Crimson Stone, which allowed him to consume the essence of every vampire he slew, absorbing their power more and more. It also granted him dominion over Death, the actual entity of Death, who would be his main enforcer. He gained absolute power from consuming the previously most powerful vampire, Walter Bernard, and broke ties with the Belmonts when Leon refused to join him in immortality. Later he fell in love again with Lisa, and they had a son, Alucard, but after Lisa was executed for suspicion of witchcraft, Matthias took his last step over the edge, turning his vengeful gaze towards all of humanity, and renamed himself Dracula Vlad Tepes, Lord of Darkness. Dracula makes constructive use of eternity. He erected the eponymous fortress Castlevania, mastered the darkest forms of sorcery, and amassed an army of beasts and heretics from every corner of the globe and beyond. After 400 years, he was finally taken down by Trevor Belmont, but as I said before, he and Death are tight. While he may be destroyed with sunlight and holy weapons, Death never actually reaps his soul, and like in the Terrence Fisher films, he always finds a way back to our world. It could be a devout necromancer, random regeneration, he once got Simon to reconstruct him to undo a curse, or he can take over the body of a living vassal. Not only did generations of the Belmont family have to devote their lives to preventing his reign, it took the involvement from the families of Belnatus, Morris, Alucard, the Order of Ecclesia, and countless others to keep him down until Matthias was finally killed and sealed for a good millennium after his birth. He's given us more unique boss battles than even Bowser, using tons of magic and vampire abilities and transforming into all manner of horrid, monstrous, and indescribable forms. Even after his death, his deeds loom over the world, and his castle, now bathed in his essence, reincarnated Dracula into a new person entirely, bringing us Soma Cruz and his never-ending battle to keep the Dracula within himself at bay. It's Dracula's threatening omnipresence that makes the series into what it is. He's the bond uniting retro platformers, Metroidvanias, 3D hack and slashers, and the occasional abominations into one grand franchise. His evil brings out some of gaming's most memorable heroes, some of them quite literally. He empowered Shinoa, sired Alucard, and is Soma. He's more than a vampire. He is the god of vampires. And to tell the truth, I really miss him. I am the Green Scorpion, and though Dracula's soul is now locked within a pachinko machine, I stand ready to oppose him should he ever escape. On second thought, maybe I'll just wait for Bloodstained. Next week, we're coming back for another pack of monsters. See you guys then.
Too easy. It did nothing to slake my burning thirst.
For now, you shall be a part of me.